Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. There are remarkable people that live in Vermont. Some are global leaders and visionaries. One has just returned from the border of Ukraine and Poland, where she was helping refugees. Dr. Nina Meyerhoff is an innovative education scholar and former Southern Vermont school administrator who concluded that the voice and promise of youth was the hope of the world. So she co-founded Children of the Earth in 1990, a United Nations nonprofit organization that helps young people realize their potential through spiritual growth and youth-led action. COE now has chapters in 30 countries and a reach that over doubles that number. Working on a new global peace enterprise finds her frequently working in Poland. And when the war began, she headed to the border of Ukraine to help out. Welcome home, Nina, and welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Really.
So first, just tell us about your experience at the Polish-Ukrainian border, where you were handing out teddy bears and helping with shelter for that flood of refugees from Ukraine.
Thank you. It has been a very deep experience, I must say. I heard a call and felt I needed to go immediately and went there without a plan. We only had about 20, we got the bears from a Vermont teddy bear, and we took over approximately 25 or 50 bears, not many. But in the end, we received, gifted 1,000 bears. Different groups sent us them, and we handed out each one individually. And what I've learned about the bears, because in 9/11, I went on TV to speak to public about children and the children needing something to love. And a woman came with a busload of bears. And I saw how people, the children, would hold those bears and feel connected and loved. And what I saw now when I took them to the border was when they first of all, people crossing the border, they have on their backs, their backpack, their clothes, plastic bags, a child under an arm, two on their hands, and they're very lost and unsure. But when I would give a bear to one of their children and you'd see a smile on a face, the mother would relax for a minute and the child would look, happy, like loved, cared for. So it was a remarkable experience, I must say. It doesn't last that long, but I'll tell you, those kids, they didn't want to let go of those bears ever, And it was something, and we made sure we gave it individually. We didn't just put a box out, in the end, there was a lot of that, but it was mainly to touch the hearts of these children.
Well, and you have done this not only at the Ukrainian border, but after other disasters. So this isn't your first time, and you kept getting more bears. We have some pictures of bears being handed out, and then there's also here they are, and this is going to attract kids right away to this big bear mask that people have. But this was an amazing piece of business that you did to hand these out, and I'm sure those bears will be saved forever. So tell us a little bit also about finding shelter. I mean, just finding shelter for millions is difficult to fathom at all. So what did you experience about providing shelter for these refugees?
So first of all, I want to say we started at the border, then we went to the processing areas, then we went to shelters, then we went to train stations, and then we went to shopping malls where they had all been turned into residence for people. So, I mean, it became quite clear that the number one issue is not getting more clothes or more food, though food was abundant at that time, medical supplies, but housing. Where do these people go now? How do they form a life? I mean, they don't want a permanent life. They want a life, they want to be comfortable for now, but they want a place where they can reorganize themselves, like a transitional home, some way so that they can begin to put the picture together of what can they do and where should they go, because they really, really want to go home,
Right.
like all of us.
So they want
Really.
us. Poland's been amazing because it's right next door, and a lot of people don't want to go further afield because they want to go back home. And so
Yeah.
we have. I mean, you talk about there's some pictures at the train station which almost looks like a mall, and you can imagine, little girl, and and here actually this is interesting. Let's go to this picture of a man carrying and helping with the luggage, and most of the men are staying in Ukraine. It's part of the legal process there. Actually, they're trying to keep men in. So families are split up. How are people feeling about that?
Well, I mean, it's so hard to imagine. When you see men there, you also believe or know that they're going to go back across the border to fight. How do you feel if you've lost your brother, your father, your husband, your son? It's just women and children alone. But the real issue is, how can they plan ahead? They have no idea. They have no idea if they'll ever see their men again.
Right.
Their lives are shattered.
And up in the air, and we're just
Really
waiting for the next place to go. So I'd also like to. You've been spending a lot of time in Poland before the war began, developing the One Humanity Institute in Auschwitz, the former Nazi concentration camp.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, tell us about that project.
Surely. I was invited to visit Auschwitz by a group of people, and I spent a while there. And as a result, I realized, I found names of family members, and I'd always been told that my grandmother was murdered the day I was born at Auschwitz. So I felt I've been doing peace work all around the world, and here I come back to the origin of why. This is my legacy. So, and Auschwitz to me represents atrocities. It's the most well-preserved, sacred, unsacred site on earth. I mean, it's an amazing thing to walk through gas chambers and terrible. So you can imagine, what is the opposite? If we believe in peace and love and happiness and wanting the world to be a better place, why not take this as the extreme negative and look at what is it that we could build as one humanity, that it would never happen again? Because, there it is, their phrase, never again. But nobody tells how, or what could the lessons be, or, how do you change that never again? So we were gifted in the town of Oswiecim, which is the Polish name for Auschwitz.
Okay, yeah, and the town that's there.
Yes, and we were gifted 2 houses, and that's another story. And we were going to make it a social innovation hub, et cetera, a pilot project of a solutionarium. And then there are a series of barracks we want to transform into a city of hope. But now that this refugee issue has come up so glaringly, we've decided to change the buildings into a house of hope. And we'll change it to house 20 to 40 refugee people. We're starting to call them Polish Ukrainian guests, because the word refugee doesn't feel so good. And so
this is temporary housing, you hope. But for the refugees at Auschwitz, what a very different use for those buildings.
Yeah. Yes, right. Symbolically, we're giving life versus taking life. And, we're looking at 6 months or shorter or longer for people to stay there. And we have a group of volunteers who have already gone over, who are going to be working on the building. And we have a GoFundMe, raise the money to help us get this done as quick as possible.
So
there are no places to house these people.
right.
I mean, the place, nobody was ready for this.
Right.
Where are you going to put 3 million people?
And
It's,
so one step at a time, and
yeah.
the town where Auschwitz is doing its part because of your organization. And before we end, I just want to come back to your work with Children of the Earth and with millennials, and your inter and intra-faith studies and your intercultural understanding and cooperation, mediation and peace initiatives that you do with very young people. What have you learned from them, and do they give you hope?
Yes. I mean, they give me hope. They are our future. And I always say, don't imitate what's come behind you. Really begin to daydream the world you want to see and live in. And then who are you and what can you offer to that world to make it possible? And I've seen young people that we've worked with run for president, or a young man in Nepal build 27 schools for children, especially girls that weren't in schools before. I mean, it's the ripple effect. And young people, if given the opportunity, have true hope and willingness to make the change. And we have to support them, because how are we going to create change if they don't do it, So we got to create environments that work like that. And when I look at Zelensky, he's a perfect example of a person that has taken that position.
Exactly. Nina, we are all out of time. I want to thank you for your courage, your commitment to youth, and your personal work. We will talk about how people can find out more about you right now. You can find out more about Nina's work, and you can by visiting the One Humanity Institute website at onehumanity.institute. On that homepage, you can also click on the OHI Bakery House of Hope for Ukrainians to learn more about housing refugees that Nina was talking about. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.